majority of Australians support nuclear power in the country. The strongest support among young Australians. That's according to the latest Newspoll, which included a question asking voters if the approval of small modular nuclear reactors replacing Australia's ageing fleet of coal-fired power stations, if they approved of that. As you can see, the support was relatively strong. 55% for, 31% against, 16% unsure, and amongst 18 to 35s, it had the highest yes vote. Joining the panel now is the Shadow Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Ted O'Brien. Thanks for your time. Perhaps the mood is shifting, but it doesn't change the issue with your policy on nuclear, which we don't have yet fully, but it's about the time when it actually kicks in. So most experts say 2035 might be the first time we get something in Australia with nuclear power actually up and running. Most of the coal fleet will be gone by then. What do you do about the gap? Do you extend the coal-fired power stations?
So you're right. A lot of the advice we have received is Australia could have electricity coming from nuclear reactors within a decade. And so what is key is that we ensure that there is sufficient power in the system. And we've said from the get-go the importance of supply. As much as we are looking at zero emissions nuclear energy, we know that's not going to be a solution for the short term. And this is why it is critical that, one, we do not have coal-fired power stations closed prematurely. And secondly, we need to have more gas. And we're particularly concerned about the Albanese government's attack on the gas industry.
So just on the first part though, when you say prematurely, so gas will be part of the mix, but are you saying that you'll just let the current timelines run out, or you'll intervene to make sure coal goes even longer than
we haven't announced policy.
But is that on the cards?
Getting
coal to go even longer?
At the moment, our position has been stated, and that's probably as far as I'll go today, which is we shouldn't see our baseload power leave the grid, especially when there is no guarantee of a replacement. At the moment, we're looking at 90% of our baseload power, 90% gone by 2034. There is zero guarantee that the system is going to be workable. So you can't close down one system without another one in place. That's the point, which is why when we've asked on specific like Eraring, absolutely, we believe that the New South Wales government should be engaging with Eraring to have it stay open beyond the stated 2025 date.
Will you announce 2030 and 2035 targets before the next election?
Again, we haven't gone through that from a policy perspective, but what I can say, Kieran...
So there's no guarantee that we'll see a 2030 target?
What I can tell you is we've learnt a lot from the mistakes of Labor here. Labor went to the last election with a 43% target for 2030. And ever since, it's been unravelling with failure. And at the moment, despite 5 years of emissions going down under the coalition. Chris Bowen had to go to COP last year. I was there, and here to show the numbers under Labor, emissions are actually going up under Labor. Now, all of this is contrary to what they said in opposition. And so I think Labor made a mistake by either just plucking the numbers out of the air or doing insufficient research and modelling to get to a number that is achievable. So they're failing on the renewable target of 82%. At best, they're going to get that halfway, at best. They're 89% EV sales by 2030 is their own department says like 27%. And emissions are going up. So I think they made a big mistake by coming out with a target based on what they thought would sell, poll-driven, but not having done the homework.
But when it comes to nuclear energy, isn't it a fact that you'll need it to be bipartisan to really introduce that to this country? Won't your job be to convince the other side of politics? I mean, I look at that poll and I say most people support it. Well, most people supported The Voice until it wasn't bipartisan, and then it went from 60 to 40. I mean, I could see something like that happening with nuclear energy. Isn't that one of your tasks here in mounting the argument for it?
While ideal, it's not a prerequisite, but indeed it would be ideal if there were a bipartisan approach across a whole range of areas, Andrew, and nuclear is just one of them. And the starting point for us over the last, well over 18 months now, has been saying to the Labor Party, can we at least agree this should be considered? Like, we haven't even got a policy out there. We're just saying the rest of the world is including nuclear in the mix because it's getting prices down, keeping the lights on, and it's decarbonising. Getting to net zero is so difficult. Surely we need every technology on the table to be considered. Labor is saying no. We would not be working in Australia's genuine interest if we said, oh, well, Labor doesn't want to do it. Let's forget about that.
But they'll just hit you with the mother of all scare campaigns in every.
I think you're right. I have no doubt that Labor will pull every trick they can to run scare campaigns. So, to me, this.
And you don't fear that because it seems like a gamble, a roll of the dice.
To me, this goes to how genuine we are about solving this problem. At no point has the coalition said, "Oh, let's have a look at nuclear energy because that might be politically easy." No, this comes from a very different place. This comes from a recognition that there is no credible pathway to net zero without zero emissions nuclear energy. And looking at other countries that are making it work and saying, you know what, there is a better way here. Is it difficult politically? Yes, it is. But again, if we believe we are doing what's right in the interests of the Australian economy and therefore the Australian people, I believe we have an obligation to pursue what's in their interest, no matter how difficult it might be politically.
So there are 8 coal-fired power stations in Queensland which have the potential to become small modular reactors. In principle, would you support a nuclear plant in your own electorate?
In principle, yes, subject to certain conditions. And one of those conditions is based on technical assessments. I don't believe it's for politicians to say, right, has to be just there. We don't have that qualification, right? So you need to have the right technical assessments done. Secondly, you need to make sure that there is also got the right socio-economic environment to manage such a facility. And you also need to make sure there's a social licence, right? Again, learning from the experience from overseas, it's so important that communities are engaged in the process. And it doesn't matter if it's a nuclear plant, an offshore wind farm, a gas plant. Communities need to be engaged. And I think that's one of the big problems with Labor at the moment. They're steamrolling regional communities. With all of that said, the advice we have received, which we've been very open about, is looking at coal plants and those communities. So looking at communities with experience in hosting coal-fired power stations because you can leverage their infrastructure. And based on a report to the Department of Energy in the United States, up to well over 30% CapEx could be cut from the project if you get those sites right, leveraging infrastructure. So we are very openly considering a coal to nuclear strategy.
When you say considering as well, just finally on this, it's a long way away, right? Do you simply set it up and if the nuclear, particularly the small modular reactors, attain certain goals, then we have them as part of the mix? If they don't, they're not going to be part of the mix? Is it impossible to say we're definitely going nuclear in 2035 this far out?
I think you can't just come out with that sort of statement, Tom, you're right, that, we're just going to go nuclear, which again, if that's all we were going to say, we would have said it months ago.
But there'll be a caveat on whatever you say.
We're doing our homework on this.
Okay.
And it is critical, I believe, for the Australian people that we are open and transparent about how this starts, that, we don't just come out with an ambit claim saying, oh, you need nuclear. Australians rightly want to know, well, okay, if you think we should have zero emissions nuclear energy, what's your plan?
Okay.
We recognise that, and that's why we're doing the heavy lifting.
We've had a strong interest. Will you come in on day one and talk to us about it, considering all that?
I will come in and talk to you whenever I'm able and whenever you invite me. But I can't promise you an exclusive, as much as I love you very much.
I said day one, not
as soon as I'm able, I assure you.
When is day one?
I don't know. I was hoping you might tell me, Andrew. So look, we are doing a lot of work on it, and I think a big lesson again, learning from overseas, is people have got to know you're not trying to cover things up. You just got to be really open, and that's why under Peter Dutton's leadership, from day one we have been open.
Okay.
We're looking at zero emissions nuclear energy. Absolutely.
I think that was a hint. Day one, you said it again. So I think that was a commitment. Ted O'Brien, we'll see you on day one. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tom. Thank you.